Councillors, can I have your attention, please? Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Town Planning Committee. I hereby declare the meeting open. We will commence this meeting with the following reflection. I would ask those gathered to join us now for a few moments of silence as we reflect on our roles in this chamber. Please use this opportunity for reflection, prayer or thought to focus on our shared intention to work respectfully together for the well-being of our whole community. Thank you, everyone. The Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional lands of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people, and we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I have no apologies for tonight's meeting. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest pertaining to tonight's agenda? I see none. Thank you. We are going to go into ordinary business now, but I think it's pertinent for me to note that we are having some technical issues. So we are audio only for those who are listening online. And so what we will do is when we vote, I will ask councillors to keep their hands up while I say your name. So those who are joining us online are able to tell how people have voted. Into ordinary business. Item 5.1, T230342 PA. Use of the land for rural industry, hemp-based mud brick manufacturing at 565 Murray Road, Vervale. The officer recommendation printed in the agenda is that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. However, I'm going to pass to Lily Rosick, General Manager of Livable Communities, to provide some advice to the council about this item. Thank you, Lily.
Through you, Mayor. I wish to advise that additional information regarding this planning application has recently been lodged and presented to Council that requires officers' consideration, including but not limited to 3 late objection submissions. Therefore, officers request that this item is deferred to a future Planning Committee meeting or Council meeting before or up to the meetings scheduled for July 2024.
Okay, thank you, Lily. Councillors, based on that advice, is there a motion to defer? Councillor Kay Cameron.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I wish to put an alternate notice of motion that Council defers this application up to the July Town Planning meeting or future Council meeting to consider additional information recently submitted regarding this planning application.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Graham Moore. I'll ask the mover, Councillor Cameron, if she wishes to speak. Thanks, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Regarding the fact that additional information, as Ms Rosick has spoken about for this application, has come in at a late time, officers have requested that this item be deferred as per the notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. I'll go to your seconder, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who'd like to speak to this item? Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. I note that Councillor Cameron has made a move to defer the item. I note that there are objections that have been received, but I'm here to ensure appropriate governance. This planning application was debated in 2020. We know it went through VCAT and now it's back. So receiving objections now, this isn't proper governance. So in the event that this move to defer it is lost, I would like councillors to I would like to move the motion, put in the agenda and finalise the item. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davies. So just to be clear, you're foreshadowing that if the deferral motion is lost, you would move the officer's recommendation as listed in the agenda.
Correct.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. I'll note that down. Councillors, are there any other councillors wishing to speak to this item as it's currently listed, which is a motion to defer? I see none. I'll go back to the original mover, Councillor Cameron, to sum up, please.
I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. We'll now put item 5.1 to a vote. with a motion to defer that item as per Councillor Cameron. All those in favour? I see Councillor Ross, please keep your hand up. Councillor Moore, Councillor Owen, myself, Councillor Kowalski, Councillor Radford, Councillor Ryan, Councillor Springfield, Councillor Cameron. All those against? I see Councillor Davies. I declare that vote carried. Thank you, councillors. I know it's a little bit tedious, but just for those people who are watching at home, for keeping your hand up. All right, we'll move on to item 5.2. T140068-2 app development of the land for 16 dwellings, 13 to 15 Marn Avenue, Beaconsfield. The officer recommendation is that council supports the application to amend planning permit T140068-1 to develop land for 16 dwellings and removal of native vegetation subject to the conditions in the report. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following, that council form a position to support the application to amend planning permit T140068-1 to develop land for 16 dwellings and removal of native vegetation subject to for the conditions listed in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Davies. Councillor Owen to speak first, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Davies. And I do note that as per the report, there are 27 conditions, so the conditions are quite extensive. So I just want to move to the executive summary. The site benefits from 2 active planning permits that was originally issued on the 19th of February 2015 and amended on the 28th of August 2018 for the development of 11 dwellings, and also a separate permit issued on the 12th of December for 2016 for the subdivision of land into 12 lots. Both permits have been extended and remain active. The current application to amend the planning permit was received on the 10th of November 2023. The application seeks to integrate the development of the site's eastern portion with the approved dwellings. Further information was requested before the application proceeded to the public notice on the 11th of January 2024, where 4 objections were received. On the 14th of March, Council received notification of initiating order from the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, VCAT, that the applicant had applied for a review under the provisions. So the addition of 5 provisions to the balance of the site is achieved with a site responsive design of detached dwellings consistent with the approved development. So there is a long history of this site, and I know a number of Beaconsfield residents have gone through that history, but I think this is positive news and might see the resolution of this site, and I think it is positive compared to where residents have been previously. So what's proposed? The applicant is seeking to amend endorsed plans by developing the eastern portion of the site that was previously not proposed for development. So as said before, there is a permit, active permit of 11 units on the main part of the site, but the eastern section of this site remains undeveloped. So as I said before, long history, dates back to 2004, where there was an application for 23 units. Goes back to the current approved of 11 units. In recent times, council had an application for 31 units on this site, even though there was a permit approval for 11 units, but with the eastern section remaining undeveloped. 31 units. It went to VCAT, large number of objections, and council refused that 31 units, and that was upheld at VCAT. Supporting council's position that was overdevelopment, not keeping with neighbourhood character, not responding to drainage issues, concerns. So it brings back to this current application of an additional 5 units to what's 11 already, but it's those 5 units are proposed on the eastern side of this block of land that was not has not previously been considered by the 11 units. So I think this is a good outcome compared to 31. We've got 16. We've got an application that responds to the VCAT concerns of basically drainage, having not respecting the neighbourhood character. The 31 units had apartment style proposed. So units abutting, having shared walls. Now this proposal sees individual units, individual dwellings, not a shared walls, if that makes sense. So it is more consistent with the neighbourhood character of that old area of Beaconsfield. So I'll leave it there at the moment. I'll let my other councillors to speak, but I think this is a positive outcome, addressing the concerns that were raised by objectors and VCAT, and it brings 31, a possible 31 back to 16. I think on the balance, that's a positive outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Go to the seconder, Councillor Davies.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Owen. I am in support, and I'd like to echo Councillor Owen's sentiments about finding a negotiated outcome. And I do think that on balance, Councillor Owen says it well, that this does address concerns of the objector whilst ensuring that we do have housing that meets our diverse community need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? Councillor Graham Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to support my fellow councillors, Councillor Owen and Councillor Davies, on this particular item. It has been around for a long time. It's got a lot of history, and it had the overthought of being overdeveloped in this site. But I think the 5 units, additional 5 units are going to go in there are a great development idea. That was going to be stage 2, this top section of this Beaconsfield lot, but now it's going to be done in one section or one stage. So I think it's a great development to go in there. Of course, you've got to understand the traffic around there is quite demanding, with the Beaconsfield Primary School being down the end of this road, and as school hours, it's quite commanding to have the traffic through there. So it's so to have this development not so intense, I think is a really good result, and I support this, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen and Moore and Davies. So I think this is a good outcome with the 16 standalone units. It's addressed issues that were around drainage and the waste management, so it will be much better now. The developer has made an effort to get an independent waste management company to come and take away the rubbish bins. And yes, traffic would have been a massive issue with the high-rise development that was proposed. So this is a good outcome.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak to this item? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor. Just having a look at this development, you can see that the addition in the second stage to this site is a really quality site. I mean, if you have a look at the size of the units, they've got car spaces, they've got garages, and it appears most of them are 3 bedrooms. So they're actually substantial units, which should be really respected, considering the original application was 31, which would have been much smaller. So it does go in vogue with the area. They appear to be quality. They've got space around them. So they're, if council wasn't to approve something like this, you'd have to ask what sort of unit sites would we approve. Anyway, I'll support this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Are there any other councillors who'd like to speak to this item? I see none. I'll go back to the original mover to sum up. Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I do thank all other councillors for speaking to this item. I do note there was 4 objections, and in summary, they did raise the following concerns. Development on the steep gradient seems at odds with Glisman Road planning. Drainage issues, VCAT issues regarding neighbourhood character and amenity not addressed. Increased traffic congestion during build. Increased traffic congestion on off-site parking. Lack of access to emergency services and concerns with public notification. Can I just advise those submitters that your concerns have been addressed through conditions. I believe that this report does address the concerns raised by VCAT around drainage, visual bulk, the neighbourhood character. I do note the waste conditions. That's important. It's a very thin frontage to Marne Avenue. So that's really important around waste. So those conditions are in there to protect the neighbourhood amenity. Regarding traffic, I live this space every day. I'm down at the school on a daily basis, and I do understand the concerns around traffic. But when you look at VCAT, the VCAT determination, they had no issues with 31 units creating traffic. You look at the VCAT report, even despite the concerns of objectors, but VCAT sort of said the traffic was okay with 31. So to have 16 is a much better outcome for those who were concerned about the traffic. I don't agree with that VCAT determination on traffic, but to have 16 is a better outcome. And I just do think it's such a better development, neighbourhood character, single dwellings, not shared walls, apartment living. It is a better outcome for this part of Beaconsfield. So I do thank the planners. They have worked well with the applicant. We do note, I think Councillor Davies talked about the housing issues that we do have. And this is close to schools, close to the Beaconsfield CBD. So I think this is a good outcome for all. So I move so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rowan. We'll now put item 5.2 to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. I'm not going to read names. I think it's clear for everyone online. If it's unanimous, that means every councillor voted for it. We'll move on to item 5.3. T220699 PA, use and development of the land for a dwelling and development of an agricultural building, 130 Murphy Lane in Bunyip. The officer recommendation is that council resolve to issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit for planning permit application T220699 for the use and development of the land for a dwelling and the construction of an agricultural building subject to conditions noted. Can I have a mover, please? I see none. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a move to defer.
Okay, do I have a seconder to defer? Councillor Owen. I'll go to our mover, Councillor Moore, if you'd like to speak, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council defers this report to the July town planning meeting to enable further deliberation regarding the siting of the dwelling and the water licensing approvals.
Thank you. I'll go to the seconder, Councillor Brett Owen.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I support Councillor Moore in this. I think there's more information that's come to hand, and I would like time to peruse that and obviously work with the planners to come to a determination of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillors, are there any other speakers to this item? I see none. I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen, for your second. It's very much appreciated. Just the applicant is open to discussion on the siting of the residence, and there are particularly water licensing and approvals that I want to investigate further with our planners, and that's important to get the right. Well, I just need some clarification on some very important items on this particular application, and and hopefully it'll come back in July. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. So we'll now put item 5.3 to a vote, but what we're putting to a vote is Councillor Moore's motion to defer. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 5.4, T220809, PA, use of land for indoor recreation, gymnasium and associated works to construct car parking spaces 4/108 Mulcahy Road, Pakenham. The officer recommendation is that council issue a notice of refusal to grant a permit subject to the conditions noted. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mayor. I confirm I'd like to move the officer recommendations, which is issuing a notice of refusal to grant the permit for an indoor recreation facility.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Springfield. Councillor Davies to speak first.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Springfield. I don't like to refuse planning permits per se, and it is very disappointing when we have to. But gymnastics is a fantastic sport and a sport that's in demand in our Shire. I've seen the benefits firsthand of having my children participate in local gymnastics, and you know, this might be a facility my family might even use. But saying that, we do have a planning scheme for a reason. We have legislative requirements that are underpinned with policies and strategies that the council run. And a key determinant is that the number of parking spaces proposed is insufficient based on the expected demand of this facility, and that the layout of the proposed spacing of the parking doesn't satisfy the requirements of the planning scheme, and that the associated impact is then unsafe and inefficient parking outcomes, which then could potentially create offsite impacts. So that's a whole lot of words and a whole lot of jargon. Having worked in local government as a traffic engineer, parking is extremely complex, and as this couldn't be sorted out, and a modification to the permit or a modification to other demands, I do believe that the council should support the council officers in refusing the permit. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Davies. I'll go to your seconder, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Davies. I support Councillor Davies' position on this, having read through the report and look at the application, the plans. You know, the number of parking spaces that is proposed is insufficient, I believe, and also the layout of it is a unique thing. It's at the back side of these number of these industrial buildings beforehand, and I really do think that it will create an unsafe and inefficient parking outcome overall for the site. So I'm very happy to support Councillor Davies' position on this to issue a notice of refusal. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Springfield. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak to this item? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor. Like Councillor Davies, I'm disappointed when we see activities coming to the area that so many people might participate in. Being the president of a gymnastics club in Oakley, I know that it is really parking dependent, because most of the kids that do gymnastics don't have a capacity to get there by themselves. So therefore, there will usually be cars driven all the time for those who are participating in there, as parents bring them along. And that brings forward the sad thing that the parking situation couldn't be remedied. As it's pointed out, it is down the back of the block. There's really no options around the space to create more car parking in that particular site. So unfortunately, the recommendation is to refuse this application. I sincerely hope that the group continues to look for somewhere, if it doesn't get approved today, in Cardinia Shire, somewhere where there's some more car parking. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Ross. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak to this item? I see none. I'll go back to Councillor Davies to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for their words of support. It's pretty clear that this just comes down to parking, and it's not close. My understanding, reading through the notes, is that the council planning team actually have worked with the applicant and discussed the hours of operation, the number of people on site, the number of cars, and a resolution hasn't been found. So whilst it's always hard to refuse a permit, in this case, it's not appropriate to have this facility right there in that location. So I will, I'll seek councillors' support in making this decision. Not the decision we like to make, but sometimes we have to make hard ones. Thank you. Bye. Sorry, excuse me.
Thanks, Councillor Davies. We'll now put the officer recommendation to item 5.4 up for a vote. All those in favour? I see Councillor Davies, Councillor Ross, Councillor Owen, Councillor Moore, Councillor Kowalski, Councillor Radford, Councillor Springfield, Councillor Cameron. All those against? I see Councillor Ryan. I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 5.5, T240007, PA, use of land for a restricted recreation facility, 7 Convoy Lane, Pakenham. On advice from council officers, we have received in writing that the applicant has withdrawn this application. So we'll move on to item 5.6, T220009, PA, 2-lot subdivision, 4 Hamilton Road, Emerald. The officer recommendation is that council issue a notice of refusal to grant a permit subject to the grounds noted. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Jeff Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move an alternative motion.
Yep.
That one, council resolves to agree to end the Section 173 agreement, AC 971492S, in accordance with S1772A of the Planning Environment Act 1987, and 2, that council resolves to grant a permit for a 2-lot subdivision boundary realignment in accordance with the conditions and endorsed plans.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Do I have a seconder to that alternate motion? Councillor Owen. Councillor Springfield to speak first.
Thank you, Mayor. It's not often that I will, disagree with the officer's recommendation in planning matters, because a lot of planning matters I find are straightforward. There is a planning scheme that we abide by, and we work within. We can't contravene the conditions within the planning scheme. But this situation is a very unique situation to this location and area. And my alternative recommendation for approval here, I just want to note, doesn't contravene any of the conditions within the planning scheme, that is associated with this land parcel. Some history here. So about 20 years ago, in 2004, the council of the day, well before any of our time, resolved to sell this separate title of land for 1,500 square meters. Sorry, that'd be huge otherwise. To the adjoining landholder. It was earmarked for a possible road reserve in the future, and realising it wasn't going to be used as such, that they did that. And they had an agreement with the landholder which is the 173 agreement, which was to amalgamate, to adjoin the land titles together. Now, that hasn't happened in that 20 years since it was instructed, but there is a point to this, because for some reason the actual measurements of the land within this 173 agreement did not match the title boundaries. So there is a small section of land that's not obliged by the 173 agreement, and has created this disposition, which the applicant has come forward in recent years and says, look, I would like to seek an alternative use for this. Reading through the report, and I don't begrudge the planning department who have put the report together, because, as I said, this unique environment where it is in a rural conservation zone, but it's in a rural conservation zone surrounded by properties that are less than half an acre in their title boundary that all fit within the rural conservation zone, because they were properties that are right along the main street. They're 5 minutes from the heart of Emerald Walk type, so to speak, that once upon a time it wasn't classed as rural conservation zone, and they don't necessarily get it right when they put this planning overlay across it. And that time when they did so. And so we've come to this point here where the officers would have in their recommendations say, look, it creates land parcels that don't fit within what the prescribed use is for the rural conservation zone, but all these neighbouring properties are smaller than that prescribed use. if we approve this application, as I think is the best outcome for this council to do, it will create the two allotments. The existing allotment will be just over 1 acre, and the new allotment, instead of being the 1,500 square metres it is now, will become just over 3,000 square metres, which is 3/4 of an acre, which is a substantial block for use. And like I said, it is in keeping with the neighbouring blocks that are surrounding that. Again, I'm a real advocate for protecting our environmental heritage, and especially in the hills, and focused on this. But this block is mostly clear. The neighbouring blocks are mostly clear. It actually doesn't have any vegetation that will be affected by approval of this application. In my mindset, it doesn't create any negative outcomes for the wider community or the environment at hand, which I do care about so much in my backyard. But I do see approval of this application will give the applicant and his family greater opportunities in the future for housing, to look at what they wish to do with their two properties. And I think this is going to be the best outcome that this council can achieve from this. So I seek support from my councillors tonight to support my alternative motion for approval. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Springfield. We'll go to the seconder, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I thank Councillor Springfield. I acknowledge his passion in this space. I do note that regarding the Section 173 agreement, it required that the land be consolidated within 6 months of the date of the agreement, and that happened. That was meant to happen several years ago, but the agreement was put in place. Following a road closure. However, this consolidation never occurred. As Councillor Springfield did say, this is in keeping with the surrounding area, similar lot sizes. It's not out of whack with that. Obviously, if there is future planning applications for dwellings, that will be considered in a future time and future deliberation. So I support Councillor Springfield in this. He put up some very good arguments, which I support. And yeah, I think it is in keeping with the neighbourhood in the vicinity, and it's not out of whack, as I said for the second time. So I support that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? I see none. I'll go back to the mover, Councillor Springfield, to sum up, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Owen, for your words. And I'm glad to see that we are on the same page of this. Once again, look, I don't begrudge the planning officers for their report that they've presented. I think on paper it does make sense. When they say, rural conservation zone has this, and this, which is, a minimum subdivision lot of 15 hectares. But as I said, not every zone can be just cookie cut and be the same. And these edges of these townships, as we have in this space right here, really fits into that category. Like many of the neighbouring lots are only half an acre, so to speak, at the same size allotments. It's not going to create any negative impact on the environment or the amenity of the area from allowing the applicant to proceed with his application that he's put forward here. I can only see it creating, a benefit for themselves and no negative impact for the community, for this council, or for anyone else. So I urge the councillors to please support my alternative recommendation, and I hope you do so. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Springfield. So we'll now put Councillor Springfield's alternate motion to item 5.6 up for a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 5.7. Planning matters dealt with by officers under delegated authority, May 2024. The officer recommendation is that council note the report. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Davies, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that council notes the report for the period 5 February through 11 April 2024. These are all the planning matters dealt with by officers under delegated authority. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Colin Ross. Councillor Davies to speak first, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ross. As a council, we aim to practice responsible leadership and build trust through meaningful community engagement and transparent decision making. As such, this report presents to the community a list of the following matters that have been dealt with under delegated powers since the last report to council. These being planning applications that have been issued or refused by council and decisions made that have not been debated at a council meeting. There's nothing hugely significant, otherwise it would have probably been debated at a council meeting, but I would encourage all interested members of the community as well as all councillors to review the report and move it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. We'll go to Councillor Ross.
Nothing further, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, previous councillors. I just encourage residents to have a look at this report. It's divvied up in wards, and for instance, there's been telecommunication towers approved by officers in Beacon Hills ward, in Dickey Road, in Officer, for instance. So if it doesn't meet the number of required objections for it to come to this town planning committee meeting, it is dealt with by officers. So I do encourage residents to have a look at this report. You know, obviously there's over 100 applications approved. Obviously we can't, as a committee, determine on every application. It's important that these applications are determined in a timely manner. So obviously we've got approved delegated authority. So I just encourage people to look at this report.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? I see none. I'll go back to Councillor Davies to summarise.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we put this to vote. Thank you.
We'll now put item 5.7 up for a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Moving on to item 5.8, Planning Matters VCAT report. The officer recommendation is that council note the report. Can I have a mover, please, councillors? Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. I wish to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carol Ryan. Councillor Cameron to speak first.
Thank you, Mayor. Council officers supply a list which is presented to keep council informed of applications that are currently the subject of appeals proceedings and recent decisions from the Civil, Victorian and Administration Tribunal. And the list attached in this document is as of the 12th of April 2024. And there is approximately six items on that list that are before VCAT at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to the seconder, Councillor Carol Ryan.
Through you, Mayor, I have nothing else to add.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? I see none. I'll go back to Councillor Cameron to sum up.
Thank you. I have nothing further to add.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. We'll now put item 5.8 to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Moving on to item 5.9, Planning Scheme Amendment Activity Report, May 2024. The officer recommendation is that council note the report. Can I have a mover, please, councillors? Councillor Jeff Springfield.
I move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carol Ryan. Councillor Springfield to speak first.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Look, just quickly to note, this report comes in each month, and the report provides an update on the status of active planning scheme amendments and planning scheme amendment requests that have been received. And yeah, I recommend everyone that's interested can do a deep dive and read through the report at some point. But thank you, Mayor. Nothing further to add.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. We'll go to your seconder, Councillor Carol Ryan.
Through you, Mayor, nothing more to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any other councillors who would like to speak to this item? I see none. We'll go back to Councillor Springfield to summarise, please.
I have nothing further to add. Thank you, Mayor.
We'll now put item 5.9 to a vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. That now concludes tonight's business. Thank you, councillors and those in the gallery for your attendance. I now declare the meeting closed at 7:46 p.m.